friends, Lutheran pastors in Minneapolis, said, "Here's this guy we follow," and I like, oh, I know that name. So, good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Good to see you, Rick.
Hi, good to see you, and especially to hear you here. Um, and one other thing about a couple, there's always more about Steve, but he's, aside from being a United Methodist minister, he's an expert musician, actor, comedian, and for over 35 years, maybe even more, the Montana Logging and Ballet Company. He was a principal member. There's not, too many people in it. Was it four guys? Or
Yep.
all right.
Yep. Four of us.
I can almost count that high. So they worked with public television, Desmond Tutu, Patch Adams, or they came across these people in all these scenarios. So anyway, it was wonderful to have you back. We had you on our program back in April, talking about art and spirituality, very dear to my heart.
It's good to be back.
So, aside from these things in comment, also, I wanted to mention before I ask you a question, because I'm going to ask you a question. Um, uh, you and I both were at Pacific School of Religion with other people we've had on this show. It's a growing list: Mark Liebenow, Alan Clausen, Don Dewey, Susan Sparks, who's a Baptist minister and comedian that I met at summer session. So what we had talked about with Lori in April was having you back. Not only that in theory, but also because in April we were still seeing news that was like, oh, bummer. And we wanted to dig deeper into how do we survive in trying times? How do
Mm.
we get through that? And it's a question that's always partly theory, but very practical in terms of us getting a good life out of ourselves. So
Mhm.
we wanted to talk about that this morning with you, and connections, especially between a prayerful, intentional life and the arts, and dig deeper into that. So anything that comes to mind to start with all of that, it's a broad topic, but it's really important. I can feel shadows over my shoulders every now and then.
Hmm. It's interesting. Just this last week, we observed the funerals. There were multiple funerals for Jimmy Carter and those remembrances, and it brought to mind how when we read the headlines sometimes and think of the hugeness of the world's problems, we're overwhelmed and we feel like we have no hugeness. We can't do great things, and we wonder if the little things we do make any difference at all. And I think one of the things that Jimmy Carter shows us is that what really makes a life great is the little things. It's true that he spent 4 years as the president of the United States, but that was 4% of the years that he spent on this planet. And the other 96% is still powerful stuff and changed the world in a lot of ways. And um, I think it's an interesting place to start, to acknowledge that each one of us has gifts and powers that make a difference in our lives. And it really does no good to say, well, I'm not Martin Luther King Jr., so what can I accomplish?
Yeah,
I'm not Picasso, so why should I even draw pictures? Instead
yeah.
of instead of saying, what do I have to offer? What is my life? What are my gifts? What can I do? And you do your little thing, and your little thing turns out to be exactly what's needed.
That is wonderful, and it just really surges into my bloodstream. Two things. One is even the big things I want to do is all made of small things.
Hmm.
It's like daily. How do I get to the big things? It's a day by day, hour by hour. It starts with getting out of. I don't even want to get out of bed in the morning half the time, but the possibility of the larger things broken down into the small things gets me out of bed.
Hmm.
The other thing is when I'm feeling small. I know my mom said this to me when I was growing up. Do something for somebody. And I noticed ever since she told me that whenever I'm kind to somebody, sometimes I'll bring somebody grocery shopping who is asking me for money. Not that often. It doesn't come up that often, but when I do something like that, I feel way bigger, and I don't even feel like
Yeah.
just Rick Bernardo. I feel like I'm in some other flow. There's some other energy I'm tapping into, and I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with guiding people around that.
You know, it's funny. We were just talking before we went on the air about how I have all these poems sitting around all the time. I just wrote a poem about that last week. Yeah,
Share it. Go ahead and share it. If you, do you have it handy?
I do. In fact, it is called "Do Something Kind."
Ooh,
When everything falls apart around you, do something kind. When the weight of the world lies heavy on you, do something kind. When you doubt the reality of God, do something kind. When you feel without purpose, do something kind. You needn't feel lovely about it, just do it. If it has no effect, do something kind again. Kindness is a match. Strike it. It warms you and the fire spreads.
thank you.
It's wonderful.
It's kind of you to read that, even.
And you
You
brought
know,
up. Oh, go ahead.
um, I think what you've said is really significant, partly because when we do something kind, we tap into the power that we have, and gets us out of thinking about what we don't have. But it also connects us with the wider community, because however it is that we're going to survive, we're going to do it together. And togetherness, in fact, is our survival. You know, I
It's
think,
The internal and external at the same time.
yeah, yeah,
More than two for one. Right.
yeah, yeah.
I, I'm delighted that you brought up Jimmy Carter. I was out in DC this week, and
Mm,
it was a wonderful reminder. His campaign was the first one I ever worked on, and I was too young to vote, but I wasn't too young to go out and knock on doors. And we were coming out of such a tough time.
mhm,
There's very few probably that remember how journalists were being wiretapped, and it was a dark period. And Jimmy Carter brought hope. Jimmy Carter brought a down to earth dedication to his service. And even though he may be remembered in sometimes how he was portrayed as weak, he was nothing. He was not weak. He had a visionary commitment to peace, and even his legacy is creating peace. And I loved how his grandson was talking about how he makes he's a carpenter and
mhm.
does uh, little cribs for the great grandchildren, and doesn't know quite how to work his camera, and wears too short of shorts and Crocs. And there's something delightful about him being human as well. Down to
Yeah,
earth. Yeah.
you know, I think part of what was powerful about Carter was not just what he did, but who he was.
Yes.
And that sense of hope and renewal coming out of Vietnam and J. Edgar Hoover and all of that stuff in the 60s. There was a person who was calm and honest and kind. And
Deeply kind. Yes.
and and I think sometimes when he was labeled as being weak, what people didn't realize is that he was simply not being a bully.
Yeah. Awesome.
And our national sense of what strength meant had been sort of reset in the era of Nixon and J. Edgar Hoover, chasing down bad guys while bombing the hell out of Southeast Asia, and protesters screaming and lighting things on fire in return. And I think Carter sort of reset the compass and said, no, strength is character. Strength is having the integrity to do what you believe in without hurting other people and without having to lie. And there was huge power in that. And I don't know that we recognize the difference between what we label as bullying and what actually is really powerful. But Jimmy Carter really embodied that.
And how powerful it was just before this upcoming inauguration to
Oh
have that
boy.
reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a
And
180-degree
I remember
comparison.
coming across staff members of the Carter Center for Faith and Health. I think that was the name. And they said he was always reminding them, don't forget to make the layups. It's
Mhm.
like the small things add up to the real points. That's how you win. That's how you
Yeah.
win the larger game. And I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Speaking of historical perspectives in the larger game, we have a recording of something called the Millennium Rap, which the Montana Logging and Ballet Company did, and Steve was part of that. As I want to remind everybody, and it still is partly. Say how the heck that came up. We've got about 30 seconds before we want to play about a minute of that.
As we were approaching Y2K, everybody was freaked out about what happens when we turn a new millennium. And I thought, well, let's look at the last millennium. So I wrote a piece that was basically the history of mostly the Western world in 6 minutes. It
It's
was
6
kind of
minutes, so
fun.
we're going to only hear 1 minute of that, and then when we
That's
come
good.
back from that, we'll hear about another minute. But this is the Millennium Rap by the Montana Logging and Ballet Company.
Leif Erikson sailed across the sea, the millennium's very first hero, while Sidraha in India discovered the number 0. The church split up in 1054, Catholic and Orthodox forevermore. The Norman conquest of the British Isle, while the Ming dynasty started in style. Some Christians went on the big crusades, fighting and killing and singing, while others stayed at home and prayed, like Hildegard of Bingen. St. Francis, St. Clair, and Genghis Khan, and the Magna Carta with old King John. The tower in Pisa took a dip and a lurch, but Notre Dame is a pretty nice church. The Aztecs came to Mexico in 1260, plus or minus, and Cambridge U started up to go. We heard from Rumi and Thomas Aquinas. Marco Polo took a shopping trip and found stuff that couldn't be finer. And the Ottoman Empire took control of the ship all around Asia Minor. Popes and princes fought a lot, but their reasons were kind of vague. And then in 1347... bubonic plague.
End-of-life decisions are not easy to make. Hi, I'm Mary T. of Mary T. Hospice Care. It's important to make sure that this difficult time is meaningful and comforting to you and your loved ones. Our hospice team provides an individualized program of physical, emotional, spiritual, and practical care so your loved one is comfortable and not in pain. At Mary T. Hospice, we understand that choosing the right hospice care provider can be overwhelming, but we're here to assist you. Learn more today at marytinc.com.
8 years ago, over 100,000 Minnesotans marched to the state capitol, standing together to defend women's rights, immigrants' rights, queer rights, and justice for all. Now, as our freedoms face new threats under an incoming administration built on oppression and divisiveness, it's time to stand together again. Join the People's March on January 18th at the Minnesota State Capitol. Together, we'll send a clear and unmistakable message. We will not go back. Building on the legacy of the Women's March Minnesota, this year's event will include a march to the Capitol and a rally. You'll connect with Minnesota organizations working to protect our rights. These organizations need your support, not just now, but over the next 4 years and beyond. The weather may be cold, but our commitment is unbreakable. The stakes are too high to stay silent. Let's show the strength of our voices as we fight for Minnesota's future. Again, that's the People's March on Saturday, January 18th at the state capitol. Details at womensmarchmn.com.
This is Chad, owner of AM 950 for Snap Construction again. Does your home feel colder than it should with the furnace constantly running? Or do certain rooms always feel colder than the rest of the house? Those are signs the attic in your home may need an insulation upgrade. Snap Construction can help by providing a free energy audit for your home's insulation. The average cost of getting new insulation can cost much less than a new furnace. Plus, Snap Construction is a BPI certified installer. That means if you use Snap for your next insulation project, you qualify for up to $650 in total rebates from your energy provider. After my free inspection, my insulation upgrade was completed within a few weeks and the rebate check was in the mail. Snap to it and reduce your heating bill this winter with Snap Construction. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP for your free energy audit when you mention AM 950. Snap Construction, arguably the most well-reviewed exterior contractor and insulation company in the metro.
Hi, I'm Bruce Klopfleisch. Join me every Sunday at 5 p.m. for Politics Matters. We'll talk about how civics, politics, and law affect you by highlighting a different topic each week. On this week's show, I cover the never talked about Third Amendment to the Constitution, how losing net neutrality will cost you more money for the internet, and how to get money out of politics. Tune in Sundays at 5 p.m. for Politics Matters with Bruce Klopfleisch to discover why government and civics matter. And podcast the show anytime on your favorite app.
Hey, it's Patrick. Your friends and family may be gone now, but the messes that were left behind on your carpets, rugs, upholstery, and more remain. That's why you need to call My Cleaning Heroes at Zero Res and get 2024 out of your house for good. That's why to start the new year, Zero Res is offering 24% off all cleaning services for the month of January. That's 24% off carpets, tiles, rugs, upholstery, any surface in your home, and don't forget about your air ducts. Call Zero Res right now at 952-ZERO-RES or visit ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. But Zero Res isn't just good for cleaning up the post-holiday messes at home. They can make your business look great too. Zero Res was out at the station this fall, and we couldn't have been happier with their quality of work and their professionalism, and the station looks great. So don't wait. Book your home cleaning today. Call 952-ZERO-RES or go to ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. Zero Res.
Joan of Arc had a special spark. There was Catherine of Siena. The popes had the Jews against the ropes from Lisbon to Vienna. The Mayans built their temples tall while the Chinese folk restored their wall. Gutenberg made prints and fonts just in time for the Renaissance. Albrecht Dürer drew those hands. Columbus sailed for foreign lands. Henry VIII became the king, and Leonardo da Vinci did everything. Michelangelo Erasmus or Thomas More and Martin Luther pounding on the door. The Moguls ran India everywhere they looked, and the Arabs sold coffee, and they got us all hooked. Along came old Copernicus, said the center of the world wasn't us. Sir Francis Drake, Vasco da Gama, Don Quixote, and Shakespeare's drama. And Palestine, the roots of lives.
Good morning. I'm Lori Fitz, and welcome to Connections Radio Show, where we talk about ideas that matter, as well as listen to interesting intervals of millennium high points.
And I gotta say, there's something brilliant about going from that reference to bubonic plague right into an ad for hospice care. That was good. That was really good.
A little awkward, but okay.
It's called a setup. Yeah.
Well, I'm Lori Fitz, your host, and my co-host Rick Bernardo will be leading our conversation with Steve Garnaas Holmes, the author of the book Unfolding Light. And we were just talking about Jimmy Carter in our last segment.
We were, and we just heard the Millennium Rap and a little more of that Steve wrote with the Montana Logging and Ballet Company. But before we listened to that overview of history in a lyrical way, literally, we were talking about Jimmy Carter and where we can maybe find our strengths in the small things when we're feeling small. And I just happened to have a couple of words from Jimmy Carter that said, a strong nation, like a strong person, can afford to be gentle, to be firm, thoughtful, and restrained. It can afford to extend a helping hand to others. It's a weak nation, like a weak person, that must behave with bluster and boasting and rashness and other signs of insecurity. So that was Jimmy Carter.
What year did he say that? Do you happen to know?
I don't know.
It's like prescient.
Yeah.
He's probably saying it every evening or something.
He probably said it in 1976, but it's still right there. Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
isn't it? It all the boisterous, and I mean, it sometimes I want to say overwhelms, but maybe it underwhelms. I'm not sure what whelm it is, but when we hear him talk about taking over Greenland or the Panama Canal, and Jimmy works so hard to create peace with and relationships in South America. And part of that was providing the Panama Canal back to Panama. Now Panama is wondering, what do we need to do? Are we going to be taken over? I mean, maybe it's just boisterous, and maybe it's just to get us off from taking a look at what he promised that he's not going to be able to come through with. But it's still kind of amazing that we're talking in this sort of imperialistic way.
It's interesting. There's this a paradox that I wrestle with. On the one hand, I am profoundly pessimistic. I don't expect the next 4 years to go well. In fact, I actually expect a full-on dictatorship. The Republicans have been working on that for 40 years. They're not going to back off now. But I certainly, even short of that, expect corruption and ineptitude. And there are ways in which I am pretty sure that we are headed for disaster, even if not in the next administration. In the long term, I don't see us turning the corner on climate change. I think I think people of my generation will die relatively happy and safe, but I think my grandchildren will not. They will struggle. And so on the one hand, I feel like we are really, excuse me, approaching a time in human history that we might never have really faced before. I've actually thought about the end of civilization more than I have in the past. And at the same time, I am profoundly hopeful for two reasons. One is that it's always been like this, even though I feel like this might be the end. I think about the stories that we have from the New Testament and how it's easy for us to forget that all of that stuff that happened in the New Testament happened under incredibly crushing Roman oppression. And there was not just one crucifixion, there were thousands of them happening all the time. And yet there was this flourishing of this culture of love in the midst of this awful, awful oppression. And I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by thinking that we're at the center of human history, even if this might be the last century of Western civilization as we know it, and something else will have to happen after climate change wipes most of us out. Still, we are not at the center. We're simply a link in the chain, and that chain is held together by love. And that's my hope. That's what actually gives me hope, that love is still there. It's still powerful. It's still the most powerful force in the universe. And when the quantum physicists actually come up with a unified field theory that pulls together the strong electromagnetic force and the weak force and gravity, and they finally figure it all out, what it will be is love. And that's what gives me hope. So when we talk about things like Jimmy Carter saying something 40, 50 years ago that seems relevant right now, I think, yeah, because love is always relevant, and selfishness and stupidity are always doing their best. And that's the world we live in. And we're picking our sides in that struggle all the time. And it's not just this sort of war between good and evil, which makes it so hard to be good, because the only way to really fight that battle is to say, well, I'm on the side of good. And as soon as I do that, I'm likely to overlook the ways in which I am a part of evil that I can't overcome, that I can't, I am complicit in this whole web of injustice out there. And so when I think of it just as in these black and white terms of good and evil, I don't do well. But when I remember that there is such a thing as love, and that selfishness is always creeping against that, and I can always be watching how those function in my life, that gives me hope. I can make choices that are for the sake of love, even if they're not perfect, and even if they are mixed in with all of my selfishness and my stupidity. I can still devote myself to something that gives life and is part of this everlasting chain that's gone on since the Big Bang and will continue to go on. And I think the paradox is both acknowledging the ambiguity of what we label as goodness, but also acknowledging that there is a choice. There's this new Bonhoeffer movie out, and it's actually put together by sort of a right-wing evangelical who likes to take the notion of Bonhoeffer standing up against the Nazis in this one weird particular direction, and promoting this idea of a Bonhoeffer moment, which is not clearly defined, but it's understood as a moment when you realize that you need to do something evil in order to fight a greater evil. And Bonhoeffer would say, that's baloney. Bonhoeffer knew that what he was doing, and by the way, his part in the plot to kill Hitler was a very minor part. It's not like he was this big heroic player. He was tormented by the fact that what that meant was doing something evil, and that what he needed was forgiveness. And he wasn't doing it because he was heroic. He was doing it only because he was too stupid to think of anything else to do. He wasn't wise enough to come up with a better way to face evil other than doing something evil. And I think acknowledging that ambiguity, that we are a mixed bag, helps us make authentic choices and live out more of like the character that we see in Jimmy Carter, who confesses that he has sinned and who knows he's messed up and needs to continue to pay attention, as opposed to someone who is so narcissistic as to think I am the one who can save the world and I don't ever need to question my own actions, past, present, or future, because I am right and everybody else is wrong. That's where evil comes from. And I think it's acknowledging that ambiguity and grounding ourselves in the continual work of love and humility and honesty and gentleness. That's what allows us to then live lives and generate deeds and gifts to the world that tend to be full of the real power of love.
Do you suppose that music allows us to hold that paradox in ways that are unique?
Yeah, partly because music is so ambiguous. Everybody says a major chord is happy and a minor chord is sad. Who says that? You know, there's no rule. There's just something about the way music touches us beyond our words, beyond our judgments, that allows for the ambiguity of getting outside of our dualistic thinking about this is good and that's bad, this is dark and that's light. When you listen to something like Barbo's Adagio for strings, on the one hand, you could say it's so sad. It's just all these minor chords and these long melismas of these notes that just kind of take forever to resolve. On the other hand, there's this rising, lifting sense of hope and beauty in that. And it exceeds our capacity to label. We can't say, is that a happy song or a sad song? Well, it's neither one. It's beautiful. And it takes us to a place where it's just true without any labels. And I think art and in all its forms, music, because it's so much of it is nonverbal. You know, you look at Van Gogh's paintings, and there is this wonderful exuberance and joy in them. And it's especially poignant when you know that those paintings were Van Gogh's desperate attempt to stay sane.
Yeah.
He wrote a letter to his brother Theo and he said, "Color is my therapy. I'm just trying to stay human with this color." And you look at those sunflowers and you say, wow, how sad he must have been to have painted such a happy picture. And all of that exceeds our capacity to label and judge. And it just leaves us in this place where we connect with what's true. And I think art allows us to do that.
I think if we live an artful life, as fellow musicians, you and I can get that. There may be chords that seem kind of sad, but they're moving, and they can add up to a piece of beauty, which is not sad in itself. And what
Yeah.
if we lived our lives as an arrangement,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
moments, to take
Yeah.
it in the best direction we can. It doesn't have to any one moment may be authentically sad. That's just life, and that's art. Uh, but how can we arrange it? Maybe is a great question, and
Yeah.
that's
And
why we have you here today to talk about. How do we
talk
get
about
through some
arranging.
trying times?
Yeah. And the art of music is putting things together. There are in our Western musical scale, there are 12 notes in the chromatic scale, and everybody from Telemann to Bach to Mozart to Sting to heavy metal bands, they use the same 12 notes. There is no originality in any of those notes. What's original is how they're put together.
Yeah.
And I think when we pay attention, not just to our own lives, but how we are part of the chord that we belong in, that's where the power is. Because any chorister can tell you, if you're singing, whether it's a quartet or a chorus of 100 voices, if you are belting out your note and you change your note, you change the whole chord, even if it's just one voice. And I think it's our relationships that are the matrix and the scaffolding for the power of our lives. We don't just live isolated little beings. We are part of this great web of life, this mystery that the Apostle Paul in the New Testament calls the body of Christ. And it doesn't just mean the church, it doesn't just mean Jesus. It means the Word of God, which is love, made flesh, which is the entire universe. We're all part of one thing. And when we puzzle over that spiritually and say, so what could that possibly mean? The scientists come along and they talk about quantum entanglement. And they say, everything's connected and we're all part of one thing.
And it's
Very
funny
cool.
you should say that because it's part of the reason why I called the show Connections. My father was a physicist and deeply believed, we're all connected. There's always a connection.
And we're going to listen to a little more, but also about arrangements. We'll talk about in our next segment, how do we arrange words and ideas so that they're funny, because that's by nature uplifting. There is a bit of a song called The Light in Our Eyes by the Montana Logging and Ballet Company. We're going to listen to a part of that. And then when we come back for the next segment, but also go to unfoldinglight.net. For more of Steve's words and book, but we'll listen to "The Light in Our Eyes" by the Montana Logging and Ballet Company.
The light can't be taken away. Woo! In all our dreaming, the world is open, open. We are not dreaming, our eyes are open, open. With all our hearts, we are hoping, hoping. With all our hands, we are hoping, hoping. In all our dreaming, the world is open, open. We are not dreaming, our eyes are open, open. With all our hearts, we are hoping, hoping. With all our hands, we are hoping, hoping. We shall sing till the children all gather home. For our hope never dies. No matter the darkness, we still journey on. For hope is the light in our eyes.
Do you have a vehicle you no longer need? Are you a little cash strapped? Rudy Luther Toyota will pay you for your used vehicle. It's really simple. Head to rudyluthertoyota.com, answer a few simple questions, and Rudy Luther Toyota will get you an instant offer. Then they will set up an appointment, and after a quick verification, they will handle all the paperwork and coordinate getting you your check. It's that simple. It's a fast way for you to get rid of the vehicle you no longer need, putting money in your hands. For more information, head to rudyluthertoyota.com. That's rudyluthertoyota.com.
Hey, it's Freddie Bell, host of New Beginnings, designed for those of us more seasoned, I'll say, with informative talk on everything from health, finance, local and regional news, volunteerism, spirituality, and even a bit of humor tossed in. So if you're proud to be a more seasoned listener, tune in to New Beginnings Sunday afternoons at 1 right here on the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, AM 950.
Hey, it's Patrick. Your friends and family may be gone now, but the messes that were left behind on your carpets, rugs, upholstery, and more remain. That's why you need to call My Cleaning Heroes at Zero Res and get 2024 out of your house for good. That's why to start the new year, Zero Res is offering 24% off all cleaning services for the month of January. That's 24% off carpets, tiles, rugs, upholstery, any surface in your home, and don't forget about your air ducts. Call Zero Res right now at 952-ZERO-RES or visit ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. But Zero Res isn't just good for cleaning up the post-holiday messes at home. They can make your business look great too. Zero Res was out at the station this fall, and we couldn't have been happier with their quality of work and their professionalism, and the station looks great. So don't wait. Book your home cleaning today. Call 952-ZERO-RES or go to ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. Zero Res.
Thank you to everyone who supported AM 950 over the past 5 years. Your contributions have helped us remain one of the few progressive talk stations in the entire country. To show our appreciation, we're offering 2 special gifts this year. First, the official 2025 AM 950 radio calendar. It features photos from Matt McNeil's adventures over the past year and key dates in progressive and AM 950 history. Second is a signed copy of Thom Hartmann's latest book, The Hidden History of the American Dream, The Demise of the Middle Class and How to Rescue Our Future. Here's how you can claim these gifts as a thank you for becoming an AM 950 member. For the AM 950 calendar, make a recurring monthly donation of at least $10 or a one-time donation of at least $30. For both the calendar and the signed copy of Thom Hartmann's latest book, donate at least $25 per month or a one-time gift of at least $100. Visit am950radio.com to become a member today and receive your thank you gifts. Thanks for supporting independent progressive media with AM 950.
I'm a retired school psychologist, and helping people was my thing. After my stroke, when Meals on Wheels started, I was on the other end of the stick, so to speak. My name is Julius Gaines, creative writer, poet, photographer.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
Turn to Auto Technical with your vehicle donation. We have families waiting for a car. You know, over 85% of unemployed are successful in finding and keeping a job if they have dependable transportation. A car plus a job equals a life changed. 612-919-5526. We have families waiting for a car. 919-5526 or autotech.org.
From the AM 950 Weather Center, I'm Tom Weston. For today, cloudy with a chance of snow and a high 27. Tonight, some snow and a low of 22. And Sunday, morning flurries and falling temperatures. Find the concert experience that's right for you at croonersmn.com. Before or after the show, check out the new Maggie's Lounge. It's a perfect place to visit with your friends. Crooners Supper Club, a little piece of old school nightlife in the 21st century.
Never dies. No matter the darkness, we still journey on. For hope is the light in our eyes. For hope is the light in our eyes. For hope is the light.
getting that hope in my eyes. I hope. There's a lot. I appreciated what Steve Garness Holmes, who is our guest today, shared with us in the last segment in terms of the paradox that we feel inside. And I look forward to hearing more. I'm Lori Fitz, the host, and my co-host, Rick Bernardo, is leading our conversation with Steve Garness Holmes, who is the author of the book Unfolding Light. And for more information and to see some of more of his poetry and his thoughts, you can go to unfoldinglight.net.
Unfoldinglight.net. Got it. And as I mentioned before, I came across reconnecting with Steve after some decades of going to graduate school together by minister friends who said, here's a wonderful little prayer or poem or song by this guy. And Steve Garness Holmes, after sharing time with me, or I shared time with him rather, went on to be part of the Montana Ballet Logging and Ballet Company. That's not a typical name for a group, but think of Monty Python with excellent vocal harmonies and instrumentation. But from Montana, maybe. Hi, Steve.
Yeah. Hey, one of my favorite lines is, it was in the Christian Science Monitor. Somebody wrote, the Montana Logging and Ballet Company is no ordinary logging and ballet company.
As if there is an ordinary. I'd like to know
the usual
line of an ordinary Montana ballet and logging company.
And I just laughed out loud because I think what happened is we were talking about music, but you and I have talked about laughter and humor too. What happened in my brain was what I would call now cognitively forced transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
There were two ideas that clashed in my brain because this was funny.
Yep.
And there was a moment of joy. It just happened.
Well, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like cognitive dissonance usually brings you down, but this is sort of a cognitive dissonance that brings you up.
Yeah. If you can arrange that, I love it.
Well, and that is how humor works. I don't remember who it was who said humor is tragedy plus time.
I love
It's when you have the perspective. What is it that's funny about watching somebody slip on a banana peel? Part of it is the tension between human dignity and human indignity, and part of it is the release. This weird thing. I can't figure out what was the evolutionary cause to when certain things happen that are unexpected. Our diaphragm contracts repeatedly, our cheeks go up, and we pronounce a syllable, something like "heh," several times in a row. Why? What is that? Something weird happens and we go, ha, 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 ha.
Exactly.
Why?
Sometimes
what
our mouth just
evolutionary-
hangs open.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, but when you were saying earlier that it's the tragedy plus time, I think there's also something about selecting the highlights. Like if someone is almost doing a ballet in terms of falling, some of those frat falls are almost ballet-like.
Oh yeah.
You can look back at it, and it wasn't just how my back felt when I landed. It
Mhm.
was the whole moment leading up to trying to stop that fall from happening because
Yes,
what's coming. And
that's
can
what's
you-
funny.
Yeah.
Watching somebody just tip over is not funny. But
No.
watching somebody flail and jerk around and try to keep their balance, that's funny. And partly because I think it takes us into that ambiguous place where we are always trying to keep our balance.
Yes.
And balance is not something that can be kept.
And we laugh.
something that,
And we laugh because we have been there emotionally, physically,
Yeah.
spiritually.
Yeah. And
How
and
do
it's-
we stop from falling off the face of this earth?
and humor is release from the judgment of being good or bad. It's we finally see that paradox, that ambiguity, and we float above it, and that's what the laughter is. It's that joy of discovery that things are not good and bad, they're just weird. and we can,
We're together in it. There's no
yeah,
laughter without a connection between people or a screen or a words. There's a dialogue going on.
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember being taught by some well-known Minnesota comedians. It's call and response.
yeah,
Comedy is about I'll do this, you laugh. I'll do this, and it gets into this song, almost like a call and response song, almost
yeah,
where
yeah.
everybody's like, "We're on this with you," and we identify together with it. And if that's why sometimes there's somebody laughing or trying to be funny, but it's actually just mean, and it stops being funny pretty quickly after that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's a huge amount of trust to go on that journey with somebody entertaining you with humor. Is just like we're going to trust each other for the moment, and if that's broken in any relationship, it's hard to feel the joy anymore.
Yeah, you know, in 37 years of doing Montana Laguna Ballet Company, we cracked a lot of jokes and did a lot of really silly, absurd things. And most often, what I noticed is that the intensity of the laughter pretty much paralleled the depth of the love. That when the four of us on stage were really in that place where we were loving each other and just having good, life-affirming fun together, that kind of humor always was much more intense and much it created a much deeper connection with the audience than, making fun of people. Rodney Dangerfield, just sort of, that's clever and we'll laugh, but there isn't the same kind of release, the same kind of depth, the same kind of connection. And what we noticed in our performances is how often people seemed to walk into the theater as individuals and go out in groups. It deepened their connection because I think humor takes us to that place where, because humor is human and related to humility, which is related to humus, which is the ground, which is dirt. And we realize, oh, we're all in this together. When I slip on a banana peel, I'm going to flail with my arms too. And that's my life. And we're connected in that way. And it deepens our connection in a way that making fun of somebody doesn't do. And,
And seeing someone fall could be, falling in that category of making fun of someone, but we're not. We're with that person.
oh yes, exactly. That's
When
what's
they
funny.
are flailing, and we have a muscle memory of
Yeah.
of what has happened and what is coming, and the inevitability of knowing that they're going down, and we're with
Yeah,
them in that moment. And I
yeah,
think there's something about creating trust with an audience, not
yep,
just amongst yourself, because
yep.
obviously this is a group that you've worked with for 37 years, so there is a certain amount of trust. But then how to build that trust with the audience that it's safe to go here with us. It
Yeah,
is safe to
and part of
explore that.
that is allowing your hearer, whether it's one person or an audience of thousands, allowing them to be able to trust that you're not going to be mean to them.
Mhm.
That part of the surprise is not going to be cruelty.
Mhm.
And when they can trust that they are safe, that enables again that release. And I think that's a huge part of how we learn to relate to one another. And by the way, part of why I think there are multiple layers of reasons why tyrants do not know what to do with things like love and humor. Because part of what good humor does is it not only makes fun of the emperor having no clothes, but it also allows people to connect with each other and trust each other. And that's what the tyrant doesn't want. The tyrant, whether it's a political leader, whether it's an emperor or a commercial enterprise, they want you to feel alone and needy and suspicious of your neighbors and a little bit greedy and a little bit defensive. Therefore, you will buy stuff. Therefore, you will trust their protection of you from the enemies that they've made up who are coming across the border, who are imaginary, but you're afraid of them anyway. Humor destroys all that. And because it allows us to connect with each other in our humanity and in our vulnerability and in our brokenness, and there's strength in that.
Are you advocating for more humor during our time of feeling as hopeless as we feel right now?
Absolutely. There's a part of me that wishes that Montana Laguna Ballet Company were still going, because we've had fun for 37 years making fun of presidents, and I think, oh man, what a fat pitch down the middle. But the challenge is that in order for it to be humorous, it has to be more ridiculous than it already is, and that's hard to top.
That's hard. There's
know?
a wonderful reflection from John Lennon, musician, but also trying to be an artist in any number of ways before he passed away. He said the establishment will try to irritate you, pull your beard, flick in your face, make you fight, because once they have you violent, they know how to handle you. The only thing they don't know how to handle is nonviolence and humor.
Exactly.
Isn't that
Yeah.
cool?
Yeah.
Anyway, just because he said that too.
Mhm.
I'm with him on that. Yeah.
Yeah, me and John, we're always thinking the same.
Yeah.
Well, I know we only have a couple minutes, but I think a big takeaway for me in terms of not feeling as hopeful as I have in the past is to create hope with others in terms of humor and joy and the
Yeah.
little things. How
Mhm.
do we continue to find those little things that bring a smile as you're smiling at someone, a stranger in
Yeah.
the street as you go by, and that maybe that smile is just what you need to do to feel good, but it may also then spread to the next.
Yeah, and
little bit.
especially because that sense of humor in us admits both the comedy and the tragedy, admits both the joy and the sorrow. I have a poem about that too. I don't know if there's time, but yeah.
Yeah, well,
We got about a minute.
We got a minute. Go for it.
Okay, here's 45 seconds. It's called Blessed Are You. Blessed are you who guard your joy so tenderly, because you're also heartbroken for the world. Blessed are you who in passing moments feel a flutter of dread for what is larger than you but more threatened, for oceans and forests, peoples and generations, and how they might suffer, and how you could ever let them know you loved them. Blessed are you when you see the child on the news and a little boat inside you sinks. Blessed are you when you wake in the night with worry for the world, with sand in your throat for weeping, and yet who carry on in hope. Blessed are you, for your hope is not wishing, but trust in the unseen already rising. Hold your thread of grief and do not let go. Follow it into the darkness. It will guide you. It will not sap, but strengthen your courage. You will go on. You will be true. You will be blessed. Your very breath is the hope of the universe moving in you. And still, beloved, guard your joy tenderly. It too is holy.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. We're running over time, but thank you for that. That's beautiful.
Unfoldinglight.net. Go to Steve Garner's home's website. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Patrick. Your friends and family may be gone now, but the messes that were left behind on your carpets, rugs, upholstery, and more remain. That's why you need to call My Cleaning Heroes at Zero Res.
Hey, Steve, are you there?
I am.
Oh, thank you. Our engineer was very gracious and let us go a little over. Sorry we had to rest at the end.
Thank him profoundly.
Yeah, he's a good guy, really good guy. So thank you. That was a great conversation. I appreciated it.
Yeah, we need another hour though.
I
Least.
can always come back.
Yeah, we'll do that. There's a number of threads that we can pull on in a good way. Yeah. Well, such a pleasure to be with you a little bit in some way, Steve.
Yeah.
And Happy New Year. And may the 4 years not kill us.
No, they won't. They'll kill a lot of people, but not us.
There's tragedy and laughter all at the same time there
That's right.
in that moment.
And even if it kills us, we will die laughing.
Yeah, well, that there is hope there.
Jeez.
I'm feeling a little dark these
It's
days,
being
but thank
more
you.
funny. I will tell you, I have been recommitting in my most prayerful, deep moments, just recommitting to more comedy and more music. It's probably the biggest difference I can make. So that resonates. All right, Steve, you take care.
You too. God bless. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.